Welcome back to the French Rugby Podcast with me, Tim Groves, ex-Scotland international and adopted Frenchman, Johnny BT, former World Cup winner, top 14 winner, Champions Cup winner of everything. Jerome Kano's back, and Toulouse's Australian second row, Richie Arnold, joins us as well. How you doing, Richie?
Hey, good, thanks. Thanks for having me, lads.
Thank you very much for coming on. And before either of you two chime in, we've got a couple of bits of business to discuss first. Richie, the fines will at Toulouse, does it include being late?
Yeah, it does. It does. So, yeah.
Okay, that's a good start. And is it a sort of sliding scale depending on how late you are?
No, if you're late, you're late. 5 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, you're late.
Oh, okay, that's all right then, Jerome.
Yeah. $20.
$20, is that it? Is that it, Richie?
Yeah, $20. I'm happy with that.
Depends on your salary scale.
It depends on how many jobs you've got as well. You've got a few, so we'll let you off. For all the listeners, we're a little bit later than we were going to be, but Jerome has been coaching, I don't know, the under 14s, the under 12s, the under 7s. A busy day, Jerome.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Mate, you're all right. Ugo Muller's just getting his money's worth. We understand. We understand.
It's fine. And speaking of people with lots of jobs, you were all in Toulouse at the weekend. Johnny was there. I saw you pitch side, Jerome. Was it weird having Johnny interview you in such a formal setting?
No, it was pretty cool, actually. It was real chilled. Wasn't the straightforward rugby questions. But honestly, he was asking a serious question with a smile on his face, and I wasn't too sure if he was taking the piss or not. So I had to answer it straight.
I got the best out of you. That's just to put you at ease, teased you. I got Richie was post-match as well. So I got both of you at the game. But actually, seriously, it makes it way easier. Even doing that ridiculous job of microphone and chatting to people, it's way easier when it's people you half know. Like the day before I was up in Bordeaux and it was Heine Adams who's coaching up there. And like I played against him for 5-6 years when he was at Bordeaux. Gloucester was George Skivington, who I played against but didn't really know very well at all. And then Jerome, yourself, and Toulouse, Roundtree, like Wig from Munster. Like I've played against all of his teams, missed out on a selection, a couple of his teams, but it was really cool to just catch up with them because these kind of people you never really get to touch base with. But to meet up with genuinely good people for 5-10 minutes and chat shit before you have to ask stupid questions for the telly is actually quite a nice part of the day. So no, it was cool.
I was trying to stay warm in the changing room. And
mate, it was freezing.
Jerome Kazov, our manager, came and told me to hurry up and get out pitch side to do my
Johnny's waiting for you.
There.
You know, I didn't feel the cold, mate. I was standing outside in the snow waiting. It wasn't cold at all. Don't worry. I didn't get the option of standing in the changing room.
He normally waits in the car, Johnny does, until his interview's ready.
100% next to the radiator.
So his questions were all right then, Jerome? They weren't boring, like...
No, they were good.
Sign him up.
Exactly. I was on time, so I'll take it. It was good. It was easy.
Hey, on the pitch, Richie, it was a hell of a battle, wasn't it? Was that exactly what you were expecting from Munster?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a tough old match there. Yeah, they're a class team. I think the match was it was tough. There were some big hits put on from both teams. They scored 2 tries. We scored 1. I think the yellow card hurt them. Our fullback he kicked the ball well, took the penalties, and that. So now it was a tough old match.
And what's the review thrown up, Coach?
Oh no, it was pretty positive. I thought there was only one bit that was a bit frustrating, is that we couldn't capitalize on the awesome start that we had. I thought the boys got the upper hand at the beginning of the game, first 20, 30 minutes. But then just missed opportunities, but also in Munster, a top side. I think the last 4 years we've played them, there's only been 10 or so points, or even less than 7 points within both teams. Even in 2021, when we played over there during COVID, both teams put up 40 or so points, and still within 5 or 6 points. So our clashes have always been close, but it was just frustrating. We couldn't capitalize on their awesome start we had.
And Richie, you mentioned the hits. Such is the age we live in. One of you was doing the rounds in the early days of this week. So the sightings are all out, no sighting. So were you relieved, or did it feel okay at the time?
Oh, to be honest, there, I think, one of the hits, I was a bit worried afterwards. I'm not gonna lie, but after the match, he was Alolo, our defense coach. He said no, it was all good. It's just funny because, well, not so funny, but being so tall, like you think you're low, but you go back,
Mate.
but mate, you're not low.
It's a long way down, and that's topical at the moment, eh, Johnny?
Mate, it's everywhere. From the rule changes in England to all of the head knocks that we're seeing. Like, even weirdly, it's been like ball carriers aren't a tackler. They're soaking, even like soak tackles, but you're seeing boys getting knocked out defensively, soaking, going off concussed, and even they're getting yellow carded. So it's become so hot. It's changing games. And obviously the rule changes that I think are going to be rescinded in England, been a massive talking point over the weekend. So we can get stuck into that as well. But huge repercussions for the domestic game, for amateur rugby, and then the knock-on for pro rugby as well. Is that going to follow suit? Are we going to go the same way? Pretty much redefine the way we play, in that so much of it is about stopping offloads and wrapping up. And essentially, if every time you went into contact you could offload, would rugby be the same? So yet to be seen. We can pick it apart, but major changes.
And you're right, the RFU may row back a bit on what they released last week, but their change was based on a trial in France, wasn't it?
It was, but then I don't have like a few mates playing amateur rugby and lower level rugby, but I've got no feedback on how that's impacted them. Whereas my only thoughts is, if you're going to bring that in the amateur game in England, and you're talking about people that have been out with COVID or coming back into the game, or like physically, are they going to be able to get lower? Like veterans, are you going to tell veterans that are 30 plus, they've had a few beers and they've got a bit of a stomach, like, are you boys going to be getting down and not hitting people with your tits anymore, but getting down and chopping people's knees? Like, I don't know. It's like the repercussions for what you're asking people to do in an amateur sector is almost even harder in some respects. And yeah, in terms of feedback in the French market, I don't know if you boys have had any mates that have played or play in the leagues that have implemented the rules here, but I haven't heard any feedback from anyone that I know.
No, I haven't. I know they're pretty strict on it at the lower grades. Like my son plays, and anything above the hips or around the chest is penalised. But that makes sense at those lower age grades to teach the right technique. But in terms of the higher grades and the higher level, I'm not too sure.
And that's it. Like at a young age, like I even remember being taught, cheek to cheek, like get your cheek to ass cheek, bands of steel. That's how you do, like with your arms, you bands of steel. But I just don't know about the repercussions for the senior game. Like if you could imagine like an ABs against Australia with that being a rule, like what you think the spectacle would, I don't know, Richie, like, as when for you be 2 meters tall, what would the spectacle be like? And realistically, would it be possible for you to tackle in that type of way?
Oh, look, I'm not a fan of it, obviously, being so tall, like a lot of the second rowers are, but I just think, like, obviously, I'm not sure who's coming up with the rules, but these new rules, but obviously they haven't copped a hip to the face when you're trying to chop low, but I just don't think it's a good thing for the game. I mean, like you said, like always going low, you're going to promote the offload. I reckon there'll be more bloody concussions maybe if you're going low. You get your head in the wrong spot, ball carrier just boom.
Mate, it's weird. It's anecdotal, but everybody grows up, or like physically we're all different. So even anecdotally from my experience, so like playing for Scotland, and we had Matt Taylor came in, who went to work with the Wallabies after Scotland, but his whole thing was low chop tackles had to be 50% or more. That's what we're looking for from our tackle base, has to be low chop. The contest is what we want to do. But I was somebody that predominantly was suited to upright tackling, like stronger upper body. That's the way I like to tackle. That's the way technically I felt more comfortable. But because I wanted to get picked, I knew that I wasn't picked if I didn't tackle in that way. I started trying to tackle low, and that's when I started getting concussed because I wasn't physically as comfortable. And like you say, I'd be down, my eyes wouldn't be in the right position, or I wouldn't be looking properly. And that's when you start copping knees to temples, when you start hitting hips. The second one I got was like around the back, when I normally would have stood up and wrapped. I went round the back of somebody and my head hit their head. So there's all these things that come in when you're asked to do something you're not comfortable with. So I don't know, like it's obviously a huge talking point in our game, but like I think the way it was announced and the way it was implemented was kind of shitty. And I think it's going to, like, with already 70,000 people signing a petition, it looks like it might be pushed back a little bit, but I think there's going to be different and more intelligent ways, possibly from World Rugby, of trying to protect the people that play our game, educate them, and what level we're going to start at, and what the game's going to look like in 5-10 years time, because that's going to be massive for participation, amateur levels, pro levels, interest in the game, commercializing it, the whole thing. So I guess wait and see.
Yeah, but that's interesting when you say it's a rule to be made to protect the players and people playing the game. But what's going to happen when all of a sudden you get stats of people getting knocked out trying to tackle low?
So I'd be a case in point in that I only started getting concussions when I went low. But like all the World Rugby data, everything that's been compiled so far, all of the big concussions are when people are like upright. So all like the vast majority of concussions, the percentages are all from when people tackle like this. So it's all head-to-head collisions or shoulder to head. As soon as you bend at the hip, the mass rate of concussions drops off a cliff. But then that's it. It'll be the next study is, well, when everyone's dropped at this height, what does it look like? But that's certainly what they've tried to do, is discourage on a world or a global level, is red cards if there's, no mitigation, you're accelerating, you're hitting high, and you're hitting somebody's head, which is dangerous. And that's why they've tried to do it, is try to reduce the amount of concussions that are created like this with upright body contact points, and try and drop everyone a level, because the percentages do drop drastically when we drop height. So that's the theory, and then we'll have to wait for implementation and see how we go.
Yeah, I just think it'll bring the offload back into the game, and I reckon it'll sway everything into benefiting the attacking side, benefiting the attack. And I think defenses are just going to have to come up with new ways to get the ball back, or new ways to be more dominant. Because if you have your whole team going low, I guess the only way to get the ball back is to increase the contact, increase the impact in that tackle. So yeah, I'm not a fan of it.
It wasn't coming in at the top level, but interesting in England, they were bringing it in at the third tier, so anything below the championship. And Fédéral 1 is obviously massive in France. And from a coaching perspective, Jerome, you work a lot with the Espoirs. You can see the Espoirs who have been training with you today, Richie, I think, and smashing you. They're playing under one set of rules at the top level, and then you send them out on loan to get a bit of experience. They have to play a whole different sport.
Yeah, I guess if you're covering different categories at different levels, you're going to have to try and broaden your knowledge in terms of what players are going to be exposed to different levels, and make sure that you're coaching them and to be able to cater for that.
A big subject, but we've done it in a couple of minutes there. So there you go. There's a French perspective on it.
Tried.
And speaking of coaching, Richie, you obviously played with Jerome. So how is it having him as a coach? Is he more serious nowadays, or is he the same?
Oh, no, it's good having Loms as a coach. Obviously, he's been around a lot, played a lot of big matches, has a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge of the game. So, no, it's awesome having him there. And when he speaks, a lot of the boys just listen because, he's the man. So, no, it's good. It's just funny sometimes, like, we'll have training and then it's a ruck drill, and then some of the boys come out there, it's cold and it's Loms is there, and I was chest in, do we have to, on the dewy ground, some of the boys are like, come on, Lommy, mate, help us out.
It's just tough because there's no way around it because I still remember what it was like as a player, and you come out and you've got to get on the ground and get all, like, sometimes the boys have a session at 9 a.m, and you're like, there's no way around it. There's no way to sugarcoat a ruck drill. So yeah, it's tough. When
you as players are complaining about it, does Jerome ever say, "Do you know I've coached the under 14s, the under 12s?" Does he bring that out or not?
Oh, no.
All before 9 a.m.
Yeah.
No, Lommy's pretty good. We don't really complain. We just get on with it and have a little cheeky joke to him afterwards.
And speaking of hard work, Richie, you know a thing or two about that as well. Am I right in thinking you're a bit of a late starter in rugby, and you started off in a sugar mill?
Yeah, that's right. I think I was 23 when I got my first contract, and before then I was just normal grind, working at a sugar mill, sort of scaffolding there on the maintenance crew, driving the crane, rigging loads up. So yeah. So very fortunate to be playing professional rugby. So yeah, I know what awaits me. So I know I'm very lucky.
Back to the mill. Back to the mill.
It's funny too. Like after a big session or when your body's quite tired, I'll speak to my brothers, like my two older brothers back in Australia. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, mate, I'm tired. And they're like, don't you start. Don't
Shut up. Shut up.
Yeah.
And that's it. Having been there, having worked in the mill, still having family there, now being part of the most successful European rugby club there's ever been, completely different worlds. But does that give you perspective and almost enjoy it a little bit more, being able to check in with family and being like, holy shit, this is actually a huge opportunity and great fun?
Yeah, absolutely. And coming from a small town, everyone sort of follows the rugby. If someone makes from our town, and yeah, it's quite cool. I go back home, go to the pubs when I'm home for after the season and seeing all my mates, and yeah, it's just humbling. It's good. It it really puts things in perspective and realize how fortunate we are to play professional rugby, and yeah.
So when you see some of the kids coming through the academy now, that I'm sure Jerome works with some of them, and they've maybe never had a job in their life and they're already on a decent whack at Toulouse. Do you ever say, I'll send you to the mill and you'll see what it's like?
Oh, yeah, I think I think those guys need to realize like how fortunate they are, like coming straight from school, straight into a program. It's like, yeah, you're living in a reality world.
Given how successful you are now, and obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, Rory started relatively late as well. Like you weren't picked up as kind of 14, 15-year-old superstars.
No, yeah. So he would have started about a year and a half before me. I actually blew my shoulder out playing club rugby, like low level rugby, and I was working at the mill, and I was waiting for a shoulder reconstruction, so I wasn't playing any rugby. And Rory, he played really well in club rugby over in Australia in the lower, like in country rugby, and then went up to Queensland and played I think Bond Uni. Back then it was the Breakers, played Premier Grade up there, and then went over to South Africa to the Griquas, and that's when he got his first sort of crack. And then from there, I think he went to the Brumbies, and so he made it first. And then funny enough, being the same size, identical twin, other teams, he's got a brother, sweet, I'll jump on the back of his coattails and get a contract.
That's a nice way to do it. Yeah. It's insane though, being identical twins, but also the stature, like your poor mum, the pair of you, 2 meters tall, absolute freak shows, massive. You must have loads of cases of mistaken identity, weird incidents. You must have used it to your advantage, like not to pull the wool over Jerome's eyes, but there must be heaps that have gone on.
Well, it's funny enough, like, when we're younger, but now, like when we're older, like we sit there next to each other, like our personalities are a lot different, and you can tell straight away who's who. But when we were younger, my old man used to tell me a lot of stories of preschool teachers having to paint our nails, to tell who's who.
And it's mad, isn't it, Johnny? Because like you look at how successful you both are now, to think that it takes you that long to kind of get recognised. Like in the UK, you'd think, you'd be snapped up straight away. You're obviously playing rugby, but it just shows there are a number of different pathways to the top.
Well, I think as well, like you boys were into different sports as well when you were young, right? You played league and you were across different things.
Yeah, a lot of league when we were younger. That's the first thing we played was league. And then in the town we're from, it's mainly league. They didn't have a rugby team. And funny enough, so played a bit of league as a junior. Then we had like a few years off, like in the I think 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, like a fair few years off. And then one day we're down the pub and one of the locals there, like, come down and have a run at the rugby team. And Rory had a few beers. Like, yeah, I'll come down to training. And I was like, oh, mate, don't worry. He's drunk. He's talking about he's not coming down. And then, funny enough, it started from there. We went down there. And when I talk, it's a low-level rugby too. I mean, it's like the boys are smoking darts after the match. Everyone, it's country rugby. So that's where it all started for us. So.
Mate, there's still boys at Toulouse smoking darts after the game. Come on.
Let's be honest.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. Like you mentioned that background in league and then the ascension, obviously the physical size that you both have. and then quickly adapted really quickly to pro rugby. The only thing that still bugged me out was I didn't like researching this was that your brother's cat. Like, I feel like I've watched both of you play for quite a few years, and I couldn't get my head around that you weren't capped. Like, that totally pickled my brain. I've got no idea why, but your brother with 30 odd caps. So how did he go off and end up in Wallaby camp, and then you ended up in Japan straight off and just not being part of the Australian selection at all?
When I was in Australia, I had a lot of injuries at the Western Force, and I started a few matches off the bench, in and out of the team. And then we went to the Brumbies. Brumbies was a good program. I played there off the bench a little bit, had a few starts. But yeah, I was always sort of, not quite there yet. And yeah, Rory already established himself. And I just decided I already had Mason, my eldest, by then. So after that, I got a opportunity to go to Japan, and I was like, look, I'm a late bloomer, like I'm just going to try to set the family up. Went to Japan, and yeah, the rest is history, and haven't went back to Australia, and loving it in France. And yeah,
Jerome, you've obviously worked with them both. You've worked with Richie and Rory, so clearly Richie says that they're different personalities, different characters, different on the field as well, but you must be surprised that Richie hasn't been capped.
Oh yeah, I've said it before in a few interviews that if you work quite closely with them and you actually play with them, there's nothing that tells them apart on the field. Like, they both have the same qualities, both leaders in the line out, bloody abrasive in the contact. So like, both of them are world class and international level. And when Richie got scooped up in one of the camps, I was quite surprised that Richie wasn't there as well. But never say never. You might get scooped up pretty soon.
Old Eddie. Has old Eddie been on the phone? He's on the phone to a few people.
No, mate. No. I'm happy. I'm happy, mate. That boat's had a long time for me. I'm happy here.
Have you ever come close in the past?
No.
How cool was it moving from Japan over to Toulouse with an identical brother and arriving sort of at the same point, but being at the club together and getting to play with your identical twin on the other side of the world in the top 14?
Mate, it was actually funny because I was up in Japan, and the season's quite short. So then I think we had I could go away and play somewhere else, like a clause in the off season, and I was close to going to one of the New Zealand franchise for a little stint. Anyway, the Toulouse contract came up, and I didn't really know much about French rugby back then, and then I remember telling Rory, and Rory was like, "Oh, I'm speaking to a French team at the moment too." Funny enough, it was Toulouse. So, playing Rory was awesome. Having him over here, I remember saying it, speaking to him about it. I don't think now I cherish it more, thinking like remembering the 2 years he was here, how special it was getting to share some big matches and just having family on the other side of the world, seeing him every day. Mind you, we're always blowing on the field, always bitching at each other, but we're quite close. So.
And initially, you moved over, didn't you? And then Rory moved over after the 2019 World Cup, and you then left, didn't you? So that was a bit weird.
Yeah. So I came over. I was lucky. I came over December 2018, and then I came over for a short. I think one of the locks were injured. I came over from medical joker. Ended up staying, and just that year, I think we won the Bouclier, and I just came in at a perfect timing. And then had an awesome time here, and then I went back to Japan to finish my contract on my last season. And it was funny because I didn't really play up there too much the year before. My mom was already mad. I'm like, nah, if I can get back to France, I'm going. So opportunity arose to go back there, and I was like, yeah, where do I sign?
You were like ships in the night. Rory came in and sort of stole your shirt for a little bit, and then you got it back.
Yeah.
And what's it like playing with your brother? Because you didn't play with him too much growing up, am I right?
Yeah, I played a little bit at the Brumbies with him. That was quite special. Not a lot, but at Toulouse it was special, mate. I think the year done the double, and then last year was cool. You just cherish. Yeah, it went so quick. And looking back on it now, like you know, how many people get to say they got to play, with their twin brother, European Cup final, or top 14 final, or any rugby professional, you know what I mean? So very special. I'll cherish all those moments.
And I want to touch on one thing you said a minute ago when you said that on the field you would nip and get narky with your brother. Jerome, you back that up on the field? Would they go at each other? Was there competitive nature between them? But what were they like in and around the club as a set? Like the only set, obviously, of identical twins that we have in the comp, but the different personalities, what are the key differences? And were they narky with each other on the field?
Oh, yeah, they were pretty competitive. But, their personalities are really different. I think Richie's more chilled. He's more calm one. Rory's he's a little bit more focused, serious. But, on the field at training, they're both, if not with each other, with the rest of the other guys. And things did get a bit, especially having Reinhard Ousted there, who goes from 0 to 100. He doesn't have a 50%. And whenever one of the Arnolds or Reinhard will make contact with each other, there would always be some scuffles. So, it's pretty entertaining.
Aussies classing with the Afrikaners. You'd have never called that.
I just found it funny a lot of the time, like, training with Raw, like, he blows up everyone. He blows everyone up, and just sometimes I'll be like, mate, fucking. some kids, some of these kids, they don't respond to like you give them a spray, like, and then I'd tell him, right, shut up, and then me and him are going at it.
We spoke about Australia just then. You said you've never really had any sort of inquiry, any phone calls as to your sort of availability, but that puts you in quite a good position then to comment more generally on the state of rugby in Australia at the moment and the so-called Giteau law that has been in place for a while. It's had some changes and it's obviously up for discussion again. They can pick 3 overseas-based players. Your brother's benefited. They've had Will Skelton in. There's all sorts of different players who have played whilst they've been in France. What do you make of that law generally? And do you think it should be changed?
Oh, look, I get it. Like, I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to keep the best players, in the country. I understand that. The Giteau law, I'm not sure how many caps you have to be, I'm not sure, is it 30 or whatever it is. If you've had that many caps, or you can still get picked from overseas, rada. But I mean, I think in South Africa, they can get picked from anywhere. There's no Giteau law. Look, it's interesting. I think results speak words. I mean, like, if you want to have your best 15 or your best 23 for the World Cup, I just think, I think it's something they need to address.
Well, we've got to ask you about Eddie Jones, because you must have grown up watching the Wallabies with him as head coach. So what do you make of him going back and taking the reins?
I reckon it's going to be a good thing, funny enough. Maybe the timing being so close, maybe a bit unfair for Rennie there, but I think it's going to give the Wallabies a hard edge, and I think that's what they've missed. I think he's gonna do good for him. So can't wait to see it. King of the mind games.
What do you make it? Like you said there, the mind games already started, but like, what do you make of his approach in general when you see him in the media and stuff that he's pushing out there? Like, do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I reckon he's an interesting character. I like what he's about. Keep everyone on their toes. I've heard some funny stories that I won't repeat, but I like what he's about. I think he's going to do well for the Wallabies.
Go on, tell us the stories.
No.
Jerome, we all know the coaching merry-go-round. We spoke about Eddie before Christmas about where he might kind of rock up. There was rumours of France, that kind of thing. I'm guessing you were somewhat surprised to see him back at the Wallabies.
Yeah, I was like Richie. I thought it was brutal, especially for Dave Rennie and World Cup. Yeah, I actually thought he was making progress with the Wallabies. They had some real close losses against the All Blacks, South Africa, and then also won some of them. But I thought they were heading in the right direction. And from the sounds of some of the players, that he created a real good team culture there. He was a great coach with them. But yeah, I thought it was brutal. But like Richie said as well, having Eddie in there, he knows what the Wallabies DNA is like. He's been there, he's done it, and yeah, it's going to add some edge to the preparations heading into the World Cup.
And do you think that's the main difference, is an edge? Like, having played against his teams for a long time, apart from edge, like, what do you think they're gaining in trading up, or trading rather?
I think Eddie Jones he knows how to do World Cups. He knows how to prepare a team to play in those big tournaments. So, and he's worked with some world-class players, coaches, and I think he was in charge when the Wallabies went through their golden era as well. So I think he knows how to prepare a team to head into something as big as the World Cup.
I'm really interested as well, because when he was part of that golden era, he brought in quite a few boys from league. Like, look at the Wendell Sailors, Laurie Takiris, Matty Rogers, another one, I think. Like, the people that he brought in. And so I'm really interested to see if there's any business done, if there's any sort of X factor or stardust that he tries to go and fetch from NRL. That'll be interesting as well. See if MD comes over to Union in the next 2-3 months, because that's it, with not too much prep time. What rugby IQ are you swapping the two coaches? Maybe a fair bit for different ideas, but in terms of personnel, if you're not going to take Richie, like, who else can you go and find? What other stardust can you go and find in the NRL? I think that'd be really cool to see too.
And aside from Eddie and the Giteau law, I mentioned sort of before the general state of rugby in Australia at the moment, and you can obviously contrast it with France, Richie. We've heard news headlines before about how, there's more people participate in ballroom dancing than they do in rugby union in Australia. I don't know how true that is, what the picture is at the moment, but it's not a great state of affairs. And obviously they've got the World Cup in 2027 after it's been held in France. So it's clearly a big sort of 4 or 5 years for the country, isn't it? So how are things over there at the moment?
Oh, well, I can tell you what it was like when I was there. That was a few years ago, but I just think Australia's going to have it hard. They've got a lot of other codes, NRL, AFL, soccer, a lot of other sports to compete with. But yeah, I just think you just got to get the club rugby competitions, strong, like the Shoot Shield and the Queensland, the Premiership rugby up in Queensland. I think you just got to get the grassroots strong, and then other than that, just success from the national, like a successful national team, like getting results, and then bring the supporters back. You see some of the matches in the Super Rugby, and it's just, you look at the stadiums and they're just empty. I'm not sure if it's bringing it to a smaller venue, like would you rather have a full like a massive stadium, but only you can see how many empty seats, or would you take it to a club rugby field and stack it? I'm not sure what the answer is, but yeah, hopefully the Wallabies can do well this year at the World Cup and yeah, get in the right direction.
And if you contrast the sparsity, like, of how far the Australian talent is spread across different sports, with playing simply for a club like Toulouse, where it's part of the fabric of the south of France, rugby is absolutely massive. How enjoyable has that experience been for you, coming over here and playing for a club like Toulouse?
Oh mate, it's crazy. Like, speaking to like a few of the other boys that play for other teams, I think I was speaking to Alex Newsom, plays for Clermont, and just like after the match, we were sitting at the bus and we're just like, just how many people I had there at the match, like all the supporters' signatures afterwards. Like, it's just crazy at the moment, the support in France for all the teams, all the teams. It's just unbelievable how they do. Mum came to the match on the weekend and she was blown away by like all the food they had there, all the supporters, and the horns getting involved, the aftermatch facilities, and she was blown away how good the French do things. So, was
your mum after Antoine Dupont, Romain Ntamac's autographs as well? Was she having selfies with them, or is she not a massive rugby fan?
No, she's a hard out rugby fan. Not sure she knows too many of the French boys, into the big dogs in our team, but I was just, sometimes I watch the match with her, and I remember watching matches with her, and she's so vocal, and I was like, was like, please don't embarrass me. Can you tone it down a bit for the match, please? I think she sat with Jodie Corey's wife and a few of those girls. So I was like, oh, don't embarrass me.
It's too late. Mate, you've been in France nearly 5 years. And like we've chatted to Manny about like his efforts to get a passport and the chance of representing France. There's a bit of a spanner in the works at the minute, but like you're only 32. You've nearly been here 5 years. You also qualify. Like stranger things have happened. Would you ever, if you were approached, give any thought to representing France, or would that be ridiculous?
I haven't even thought about it, to be honest.
We're asking you now, Fabian said. Come on.
Oh, yeah, look, I think it's a far shot, to be honest. But yeah, who knows? I'm happy at Toulouse, mate. 32 now. Season's already long enough without Six Nations and all that sort of stuff. So,
and contract wise, you got a couple of years left, right? So Jerome doesn't need to speak to Ugo and get the extension yet, but a couple of years tagged on the end of that one as well.
Yeah, I got 2 more years, so that'll take me up to 34. Getting there. So we'll see how these brutal winners go, and these long seasons on the body, and I'll see with the family what the plan is after that.
All I'm going to say is, if you only start at age 26, it's like you're actually age 20. That's what I'd be selling it. When you go in to negotiate with Jerome and Ugo, be like, boys, I've only been doing this 6 seasons. I'm like a 22-year-old. That's what you got to sell.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned the big dogs there, or I mentioned Antoine Dupont, Rowan Entomac. You called them the big dogs. We hear a lot about how, a Johnny Sexton or an Owen Farrell, they're just the most intensive guys and they absolutely drive the environment that they're in. They might be different sort of personalities, but what are those two like? And I'm guessing they set the standards, but do they really kind of drive the environment?
I think there's more boys than that. I think, obviously they're up there. And then you got guys like Julian Marchand, other boys like Cyril that have been there for a long time, Francois Cross, a lot of those boys. And then, there's a lot of leaders in that group that drive the standards. So it'll be interesting now over the next wee break with the Six Nations how we go, and obviously losing a lot of players, but it's a good challenge for us and a good opportunity for a lot of boys that haven't been getting many game time. So,
and this may seem like a daft question, but Roman is basically like a male model, and we've seen Antoine in his dressing gown on the front of GQ. A fan would sort of say, they basically look perfect from the outside. So if you got any dirt you can give us, have they got a hairy back, or do they smelly feet, or anything, or are they actually perfect?
Nah, they're good fellas. I can't dish up any dirt. I'm sorry, man.
I keep digging, Johnny, every time. I'm like, there must be something wrong with them, but there's not.
Maybe, they are. I tell you what, though, there's some like any bit of game. Like we'll have some games at training, and like there'll be rules. You go be like, oh, 2 touch go down, this and that and that. I tell you what, those French boys, mate, they're their own referees. They're stop running. They're like, oh, qu'est-ce que tu fais?
Jerome, we sort of spoke about the South African team's inclusion in the Heineken Champions Cup when you were on before. And we know that Antoine's been quite vocal about that, or he probably just gave one throwaway comment and it was picked up widely because he's Antoine Dupont. But it's obviously interesting to see your opponent in the round of 16.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I can't really comment on the South Africans' inclusion because I haven't been a part of European rugby for that long, and obviously the guys that have been based here or from here know the history and are quite patriotic about it. But for us, for Toulouse, it's quite interesting to have the Bulls, and then to be able to prepare for a different brand of rugby, a different type of rugby. Me and Richie used to play against a lot of those teams, but having them play here in Europe is going to be interesting to look at a different type of team, different type of style, and I'm sure in terms of the context, nothing's going to change, but personnel is going to be quite interesting.
And so what are you expecting? Because pre-game, like Richie, we were chatting on the touchline, And I was like, oh, who do you want in the next round? Like, obviously, this game's in your hands, and you win by this points, and this is who you. And you're like, there's one team I don't want to get. It's the Bulls. And then,
There we go.
at the final whistle, I come over and be like, oh mate, like, so what are we expecting? So like now you've got the Bulls. I've never played against them. It's never been a competition I've been part of. What do we expect? European rugby. You've got them in the next round. What do we expect from them?
Oh, look, I'm not too worried, to be honest. I mean, I'm not sure if it was the 18 that played Leon, and Leon gave him a hiding. But yeah, look, we got some big boys. I mean, the Bulls, they're pretty, they maul, they're physical, and they're fit like a premiership team. So it's going to be fun. I mean, we got some big boys in our team. Yeah, I'm not really worried, to be honest. I reckon at home, yeah, it's going to be a good match.
Mate, I'm just lucky I'm on the touchline with a microphone because like even being touchline at that game of the weekend, like it's ridiculous. Some of the collisions, the defense, the way you boys blitz up and smash, and then you add some South Africans into the mix, it's only going to go one way and get more intense. So it's nice for me to stand and watch the touchline, but I'm glad I'm not there anymore because it will be ridiculously physical.
Yeah, me too. I'm just glad that my preparation ends behind a computer screen.
Just hand out the instructions. Here you go, Richie. You go and do it.
Okay.
Thanks ever so much for coming on, Richie. Good luck in that round of 16 tie. And if you get a call from an unknown number, could be Eddie.
Yeah, no, I hang up on all those unknown numbers because they're telemarketers or something.
Cheers, Richie.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having us, guys.
Cheers, bro.
Thanks, mate. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
We mentioned it there, but Jerome, like Johnny's right. How he's not been capped by Australia. It is a surprise, isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible. The quality, you see the qualities that Rory has on the international stage, and Richie poses them as well. So, yeah, for me, it's quite surprising.
And pretty much everything you want from a lock. Like his line out work is insane. He's a quality caller.
Yeah.
But then the thing that I find freaky about a guy that big, like I've played with people that big before, but it's the physicality he brings with it. Like you don't expect people at 2 meters plus to be, busting through contacts, offloads, leading defensive lines, smashing, athletic, and doing repeated efforts. Like he does it all. He's a total machine. So like his bros picked up, I think 30 odd caps, but the fact that Richie's just obviously career different direction, but he's a man that clearly belongs on the highest level, and he has that stage with Toulouse, but he's another one. It'd be awesome to see him in international stage because he's some athlete and he just gets through so much work. Yeah, it's just crazy that he hasn't got one cap to his name.
Completely straight battered our inquiries as well. He said he's not answering his phone to Eddie, and what the fuck would Fabian be doing calling him? It's not happening. So there you go. Johnny, to tie up our Champions Cup chat from earlier, we should really find out what your meter moment of the week is.
It's a really easy one, lads. And he's not here, but he was training today about 50 minutes from the house. My son was watching him train today, and I think managed to get a cheeky autograph if he managed to hunt him down. But Greg we're talking of freaks and 2 meters tall, but I'm not sure if you watched La Rochelle's game. Greg was absolutely ridiculous. 19 carries. I think he got through 50 meters. He scored a try where he carried 2 Northampton boys over the try line with him. He made 7 tackle breaks. He made 3 offloads. He made 2 turnovers. He essentially goes forward every time he touches the ball, every time he goes into a contact. I think he's now got 7 tries for La Rochelle, which is joint top scorer with Raymond Rule in Champions Cup. And he was just quality in every single thing he did. He's even started jumping in line out, which he didn't do before. And now he's like front option. He's got that. So like Fabian will be delighted. He's got him ready for Six Nations. He's primed. His form is ridiculous. But Greg was certainly man of the match of the weekend, but probably player of the weekend. He was ridiculously good.
Oh yeah, he's a freak. He's we haven't even got to the World Cup yet, but he's had a hell of a season. So I think being on the podcast has elevated his form a little bit.
I wasn't going to claim any credit, but we'll do it. Hey,
no, we're making him more rounded. His English is getting, or he's a more rounded individual for spending time with us. Let's just leave it at that. That's what's bringing him these performances, nothing else.
We relaxed him last week as well, didn't we? He was a bit uptight. We loosened up, and do you see what happens?
No, he's been a freak for the last 3 years. For me, he's just he can do it all. He's he contests the ball and the tackle. He's a machine on defense, and with ball in hand, he's a absolute menace. So no, he never drops his form, whether he's playing top 14 for the French team or even European Cup. It's incredible.
Do you reckon he's in the top 2-8s? I'm trying to think. I'm like Ardi Save. I love watching Ardi Save as well. I'm like, those two for me would be the top two, probably globally. Would you agree?
100%. Yeah, Ardi and Greg Odwit would be probably the best number 8s going around, if not probably some of the best number 8s that have played the game, and they haven't even touched the surface of what they're capable of.
And everything going well, we get to watch them go head to head in the opener of the World Cup, which will be quality as well. What a matchup that'll be.
No, I can't wait for All Blacks win.
A deserved winner. That was our Meter moment of the week. And Meter is the world's #1 wireless meat thermometer, recently making over 20 million cooks better with their game-changing app and completely wireless Bluetooth meat probe. You can use it on a barbecue, in the oven, or in a pan, and you can get your hands on one at meter.com. Plus, you can get 10% off any full price item. All you have to do is enter the code FrenchPod10 at checkout. That's FrenchPod10, and you'll get 10% off any full price item at meter.com.
Another discount codes. Now, we've had this before, but is Richie aware of your undies? Not your undies that you wear personally, but Mint Undies, your company. Does Richie pick them up as well? The boys wearing them at Toulouse?
Yeah, Richie wears them. A lot of the big boys wear them. They enjoy it. I see them wearing it during training. So, if you're listening, go to mintwear.co and add in the promo code FRP Mintwear to get 20% off all undies.
There you go. We're going to ask everyone we have on from Toulouse. So far, Manny's given the seal of approval. We didn't ask Richie, but you've said he's given a seal of approval as well. There you go. Get your hands on some now. And Johnny, before we go, it's never a week in the top 14 without some rumours, so we should touch on some. I heard Cockers to Montpellier.
I heard that too. Again, I think Philippe Saint-André is still looking for the sort of elevated management role and a director of rugby. And Cockers has had a bit of time in France in a dim, distant past. He's a fairly hard head coach. Like, he was hard at Edinburgh. He's been hard at Leicester. I'm not sure how that would fit into the French mould, although Vern Cotter was very similar. It worked for him at Clermont. So Cockers to Montpellier, that's a big one that's been going around this week. Harry Williams also potentially joining the Exodus to maybe follow suit and head to Montpellier as well. There's a few ones we talked about. Semi Radradra for Bordeaux, potentially now looking at Lyon. So there's a few swirling around. Nothing signed yet for those three, but I reckon it'll be potentially done deals in the next couple of weeks.
And Jerome, on the coaching side of things, Raphael Ibanez has signed a new deal to remain with France until 2028. Obviously, we hear loads about Fabien Galtier, but I don't know about in France, but certainly in the UK, Raphael Ibanez goes under the radar a little bit. But how important do you think he is to the whole France machine?
Oh, he's huge. Obviously, he's an ex-player and gets along with a lot of the guys, so he'd know the DNA of the Le Bleu, and you'd probably be the main one driving everything behind closed doors with the team. So I knew about Raphael Ibanez when he was playing the famous one-hand line-out throw.
Yes.
And I think he'd have a great rapport with the players. So having him around and having a lot of the ex-players, legends, driving stuff within the team would be huge. And seems to be working for them at the moment.
He's also a real close mate of Fabian. So they won Grand Slams together, Six Nations together. They go way back. I think as well, when you look at, there's a couple of people moving on. So Thibaut Giroud's moving. You got Karim Ghezal, Labitte as well. Like, all these guys are moving. It's important to have some sort of consistency. So you've got Semperé coming in, the forwards coach from Stade Francais. But with Fabian, with Sean Edwards, it's important to think, they've had some real success. Keep some of the furniture together and bring in new elements, maybe add a little bit of some fresh ideas. But certainly, look, they all get on really well. They go back a long way, him and Fabian. And like you mentioned, he's a real sort of father role within the group, in that it's managerial, it's not on field, but he's just a good egg and sort of the glue, shall we say, that keeps it all together. And he's done a great job so far. So great that he's going to be there. It's a big old contract too, 2028. So well done him.
Absolutely. We'll chat more about him and France next week, I'm sure. Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Jerome. Big thanks to Richie Arnold for joining us as well. And thanks to all you guys for listening. Make sure you hit subscribe. Leave us a nice review if you can. Check us out on Rugby Pass and on YouTube. And we'll be back with another episode next week. Au revoir, guys.
Cheers, fellas.
Yes.